Hey, in this episode, we're going to talk about placement of your record hand for scratching. Hey, so one of our viewers named Moses Goldstein asked us to make a video about placement of your record hand while scratching. So Moses, this one's for you.
In this episode, we're going to section the content in 3 parts. The first part is hand placement on the vinyl. And the second part, we're going to talk about the surface area of your fingers, or what part of your hands are touching the vinyl. And the last section, the third section, is the amount of force needed to scratch.
The topic of this episode is about how to place your hand on the record while scratching. And the answer to that is you need to place it wherever and in whatever way best enables you to control the record really precisely and to get the sound that you're going for in your scratching. So let me get into a little bit more detail with that. From the time I started scratching until now, I would generally just put my finger on kind of in the middle of the record. And by that, I mean the middle of the section with grooves. So kind of the middle of the black part usually. And what I found is that for certain scratches, you want the record to move a whole lot. Like if we're watching the marker here, for certain scratches, we want it to move a whole lot, right? And in others, we maybe want it to move very little, right? Like really.
So let's give an example. So like a ah would be this long, and maybe a kick will be this short.
Yeah, that's a good example. For me, in the cases where I want the record to move a whole lot, like I want a wide range of sounds to be heard, then what works good for me is to put my hand, rather than being right here, for wide record movements, I find it works well for me to put my finger closer to the spindle, like maybe even on the label. And yeah, it enables me to move it like a whole lot. Like you get a lot of sound covered per movement of your finger, if that makes sense. But at other times when I want to make really fine, precise movements, like Akiko gave the example of drumming, then I find that it's easier to get that really fine, precise control when my finger is closer to the outside. I think you can kind of intuitively...
When you say fine...
Yeah, like drumming. Like if you just want the marker moving a little bit, I find it's easier to have
for
my
you.
finger, closer to the outside.
Okay.
And for wide record movements, closer to the inside. And I think like if you kind of try both ways, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like let's say you want a wide record movement. Like try getting a wide record movement with your hand closer to the middle, and then try getting a wide record movement with your hand, with your finger closer to the outside, and you'll see you have to move it like, I'm exaggerating kind of, but you see you got to move it, like look how much my arm is moving. Whereas if I want to get that wide movement more efficiently, like look, here, you try it. Like
no, I'm understanding, but I just having issues. Like I think it's contradictory, kind of like you're saying when you want fine movements, you're going about here, where like you could just do the same fine movement, but less movement here.
Yeah, but I feel like it's kind of...
Like what I find, okay, so what I have in mind when you're like out here, DJ Havoc illustrates this like, old school scratching. A lot of it's the movement outside the platter.
Okay.
And a lot of it's like the body movement, right? Like that's old school, like boop, 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 boop,
Okay.
boop, 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 boop. And now the new school cuts, it's all here incorporated with just the kind of the finger and the wrist movement. It's very minimal movements, and it's all here and robotic. The body and the movement, that's not there anymore. If that makes sense.
Well, based on this, maybe this illustrates that there is no definitive answer. I mean, I have one opinion about it, and Akiko just said the complete opposite. But I think we can both agree that whatever best enables
works for you.
Yeah, to control the sound and get the sound the way you want it to be is what you need to do. So for me, it's what I just said, and for Akiko, let's hear your take.
We just want to highlight, especially for beginners, that it's really important to build consistent scratch mechanics. So here on the vinyl, or I like to feel the closer you get to the spindle, the more control you have. And he was explaining the less movements, micro movement, you get more coverage. And a lot, well, you know, this illustrates too, like where I usually keep my fingers. If you guys could take a look at that label
or
here.
you can put it here.
You're gonna hear.
Yeah, I know. You know, one thing, this brings up something else I want to mention. I noticed that on a lot of scratchers records, especially the ones they use for a long time, like it's worn the fuck out on the label. Whereas if you look at my records, like all the dirt and crap is on the grooves rather than the label. So I guess, you know, that kind of illustrates where each of us puts our finger most of the time.
Yeah, and it's gonna be different, especially because I have tinier hands and he's bigger than me. I as far as my hands, it covers about at best 25% of the surface area, so I have to do a lot of work. I was gonna get back to this a little later, but you know, basically what I try to envision is most of my work is here. We're using a 45, and
So you never put your fingers.
Not to say that, like, and it's going on further in our episode, but you know, as our scratch vocabulary expands, you'll learn that you're gonna have to execute different scratch techniques from different parts of the vinyl.
Yeah, one real quick thing I'll say about that is if you watch a Qbert performance, you know, Qbert has as big a scratch vocabulary as anybody, meaning he has mastered the most different kinds of scratches. And if you watch a Qbert performance, I mean, his hand is all over the place. Like sometimes he's got his whole hand on the shit, and sometimes he's, you know, just right here. And
I would highly suggest once you get like your basics done, or you know, mastered.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that, especially a beginner, I'm not suggesting that you should be like Qbert right away and put your hands all over the place. But what I was illustrating is that, like Akiko said, as your scratching vocabulary expands, you'll probably find it becomes necessary to just make these fine adjustments as far as where you put your finger on the record.
Everybody's gonna be a little different, but you know, we're talking about what part of our surface areas, our fingers, are actually touching the vinyl. So let's, you know, Mike's right here, so let's talk about, he has his left hand on the vinyl. I use both hands. So let's see, or primarily, let's go over just the basic scratches, like the baby tear.
Yeah, so
where do you...
Oh, like what part of my hand or fingers do I put on? Well, I mean, for me, I use my middle finger and I put it... You know, I'm all about wanting to get the most...
So it's mostly the tip. It's mostly the tip then, I'm seeing.
Not like the tip like that, but...
The top pad.
Like your whole... Like your fingerprint. Like I'm not like this, and I'm not like this either. Right. But yeah, so I use my middle finger. So that's what I do. I pretty much put my middle finger and the whole fingerprint so that I could get a good grip on it. You know, more surface area, more friction, more control. But having said that, what I wanted to say was that, you know, you'll find some scratchers, they'll put kind of both their middle and their ring fingers on it. Or I swear recently I watched a video of some guy and he was dope, but I think he was just using his ring finger. But, you know, it's all preference, whatever. Again, always circle back to what gives you the most control and ability to get the sound that you're going for.
Consistency and cleanliness. Those are key things. Okay, so cool.
You have...
yeah, you know, you kind of touch about it, like as far as variation. I usually have two. My
middle and ring
usually.
Yeah, that's typical.
So this is a lot of like my basic hand positioning, like I guess the OK circle.
So you kind of got your pinky on there too.
Yes.
Or would you say you use your pinky to help control
to stabilize,
it, or it just happens to be there?
Depends.
Maybe stabilize it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is my kind of my go-to position on my left, and then on my right, kind of the same thing, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's all on the upper pads of my fingers here, 1, 2, 3, and I curl this one. And,
okay. But I mean, you've seen guys also who, like I saw some guy killing it with like his ring finger, which I thought was weird, but he had control of it, and that's the name of the game.
Okay, cool. So then the last section, amount of force needed, the touch for scratching.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll start off talking about that. So there's two considerations for this, and you kind of have to balance the two against each other. On the one hand, there's advantages to putting a lot of downward pressure on the record, which I'll explain, and there's advantages to not putting so much pressure on it, which I'll also explain. I think they're both important things to consider, and you kind of have to balance the two. Imagine you're driving your car with one hand, You're not going to do your thing.
Okay.
Imagine you're driving your car with one hand, and let's say you're going hella fast. So you really need to control that thing, and you really need precise control of it, right? Now, what you'll find is it probably helps you in order to control the steering wheel to push forward on the steering wheel, right? Either that or pull it towards you. But either way, you're putting force on it one way or the other, right? And the reason is because it helps you to more finely control the turning of the wheel, right? So likewise with controlling the record, putting downward pressure, obviously you can't pull upward on the record, but putting downward pressure on the record enables you to more finely control the spinning movement. So that's the case for putting more pressure on the records. On the opposite side, there's reasons that it's better not to put too much pressure on the record. One being that you're kind of wasting energy, being inefficient, exerting force towards something other than what you have to do. Another reason is that if you put too much downward force on the record, if your turntable's torque isn't strong enough, then it'll cause you to have problems releasing the record, like it'll sound all fucked up. And also just speed. Like if you want to move your finger fast, it's probably easier to move it fast without pushing down on something, right? So those are kind of the two considerations that you have to balance.
So we're gonna wrap up this beautiful episode with some tips. All right, so definitely experiment your hand placement all around.
Yeah, it can't hurt. Just try it, and if you find you're not controlling it well or you're not getting the sound you want, change it up. Just try it all. Don't be afraid to. There's no. I think what some beginning scratchers might be looking for in this video is this definitive, like we tell you exactly how to do it, and this is how you must do it. But that's not the case at all. So
we're just guides, and we're just providing a framework. So you guys can work from there.
Again, like as you evaluate how you want to place your hand on the record, always circle it back to what enables you to get the best control of the record to produce the sound you're looking for.
Also using drill mats, if you guys don't know who or what drill mats.
Oh, yeah. So this was a concept made up a long time ago by DJ Focus. Well, this was invented before by DJ Focus, but more recently our homie Nemesis has created something called drill mats, where you place this thing under.
It's basically like Dyson.
Nemesis's drill mats are really dope. They're really well made, and they're well produced. But I mean, honestly, I had like a kitchen drawer liner that I just kind of cut and stabbed a hole in it. I actually don't use this method of training, but you do, so you tell them about it.
Oh, well, it just provides a nice resistance in training. If you could think like for those baseball players out there, putting a donut before going to at bat.
A weighted bat.
Exactly. It's like weighted scratching. And so
that's exactly what it's like. I've messed with it a little bit before, but I think you use it more than I do. What's been your experience with it? Has it helped? Or?
It definitely has helped when I do some focus training on it. So if like I only do it like only scratch on a drill mat for like a week or something, the gains I get from the following week is just
but you don't go like back and forth in the same session.
I try not to. I try to do like consistent training. What I mostly do is because I find like the tension of just the drill mat itself is just a little too harsh.
Okay.
So you put the slip mat
in addition.
Yeah, and then I put the drill mat on top, and it helps.
Try it if you want. Make a bootleg one with your kitchen drawer lining. You know, if it helps, make one or use one of Nemesis or Focus's mats. But if not, then that's cool too. But you know, we're just kind of throwing every possibility at you so you can try and find out whatever works.
Definitely, and it just kind of just burns your forearms, it gets you stronger, and so it helps.
The drill mat.
So it just builds on that strength and stamina. So really great way to train. And then lastly, train with the 45. We just kind of talked about, you know, vinyl control. Me personally, I feel like if you're focused, you're using a 12-inch, but if you just kind of envision having a 7-inch, right?
Obviously, this record right here is one that we put out earlier this year.
Is it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Called Yay versus Day.
What?
I obviously wanted to scratch with our record, and I don't always use my portable, so sometimes I would use our 7-inch record on a full-size turntable. Obviously, not with a record under it like this.
7 inches are better.
But what I found for me was that it's harder to control a 7-inch compared to a 12-inch, but it enables you to go faster. So I'll use a car analogy again. Like, you know how some cars are kind of big and comfortable, and the handling, like they turn very gradually when you're making a turn. And then you have like jittery sports cars that are really responsive and super sensitive in the steering. It's kind of like that scratching with a 7-inch versus a 12-inch. I find that when I use a 7-inch, it's harder to control. It's more fine control that's required, but it enables you to go faster. So what I find is when I get used to scratching with a 7-inch and then I switch to a 12, it's like, oh, I can't go quite as fast, you know, if I'm really pushing my limits, but it's easier to control. It's like a car that is less erratic.
So it's a great way, focus training for vinyl control. It's a shortcut for gaining and improving your vinyl control as well.
Yeah, and what you'll find is that you'll get your best results with whatever you're used to. So I say if someone were to train on 7 inches only.
Oh, you need to mix it up.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying, say someone only trained on 7 inches. Yeah. They'd be able to go faster than they would, I think, if they were on 12 inches. I mean,
I would like to experiment. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just try both. It enables faster top speed on a 7-inch, but it's more erratic and a little bit harder to finally control. So there's kind of upsides and downsides to both. I mostly, on my full-size setup, stick with 12-inch records because I think the sound quality is a little better. But
this is just kind of a bonus health tip for those who are troubled with tendonitis and carpal tunnel kind of things. Scratching on a 45 is lighter and is a lot kinder and gentler on your hands.
You ever had those kinds of?
Oh yeah, I'm struggling with those things now.
Oh,
so
no shit.
Sometimes I scratch on 45. So
and it's easier. Those problems are alleviated.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good tip. Okay. Well, that wraps up this episode of Skratch Snobs. I'm Mike C. This is Akiko Love.
Woo!
Thank you for watching, and we hope it helps. Peace.
Peace.
Hi, my name is Michael. I want you to take a trip with me and discover the secrets that I've known for many years. That man was truly destined to fly.
I can never stop working hard. Each day I feel I have to improve. Hard work, determination. I've got to keep pushing myself.